Joined now in studio by Rink-Wide's Jeff Paterson, Canucks reporter, and we'll be doing the game tonight, Jeff. And well, you're from Rogers Arena, and the big question, dress rehearsal or still experimenting in the final game of preseason?
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to get a coach, and Rick Tocchet certainly wouldn't cop to this being his opening night lineup. So I think coaches want to leave themselves a little wiggle room, but I think we can also deduce that, look, the right side with Elias Paterson, Andre Kuzmenko, it was Nils Höglander a couple of weeks ago in Victoria. They've tried Anthony Beauvillier there. Paterson obviously has been ill for some of this week, so he hasn't played since last Saturday against the Oilers, but great opportunity for Connor Garland to leave a lasting impression on the final night of the preseason. And again, Höglander, we've talked about Podkolzin to death, but Höglander is still on the roster. But there's been a bit of a fall here, obviously, for him to go from the right side with Paterson and Kuzmenko at training camp in the first preseason game to being the odd man out. They've got 13 healthy forwards. Ilya Mikheyev on the ice at the morning skate again continues to make progress and get closer, but don't think he's going to be ready for next Wednesday. So somebody had to sit, and it's going to be Nils Höglander based on the morning skate. Will Höglander be that guy again as a healthy scratch on Wednesday when they open against the Oilers? Rick Tocchet said, look, Höglander is going to play for us. He will play. So it certainly sounds like he's going to make this team out of camp here. But, still trying to figure out exactly what he brings. Where does he slot in? The other guy's Beauvillier, who, in a contract year for him, you would have thought that he would have done a little bit more in the preseason, but he's been remarkably quiet. And it certainly looks like he's going to start in a third line capacity, which is a bit of a drop compared to where he was after the trade last year.
Yeah, pretty surprised with that. And just because a little bit of the size there with Suter, who's also a smaller guy, but they got Dakota Joshua on the other wing. The big one for me is finally Hughes Hronek. What's your interpretation there?
Yeah, I think that they want to see what that looks like, and that can be a supercharged pair for them. It's preseason, so you hope that they don't run them out there 28 minutes, but certainly that has the capacity in some games if they do play that way. But it's moving the chess pieces around. And Noah Juulsen, who had a tough night in Calgary and that 10-0 slaughter, and again, you don't want to take an awful lot out of that, but Juulsen starts training camp with Quinn Hughes, then has a tough night in Calgary, kind of becomes a forgotten man. And yet, if we're trying to read into the way that the Canucks were lining up at their morning skate, looks like Noah Juulsen is back in the top six, and Christian Wolanin was skating with Cole McWard. And so Cole McWard's been flavor of the week, obviously, but when it gets down to brass tacks, maybe Cole McWard makes this team, but won't be in the opening night lineup. They still have decisions to make, right? They've got to figure out if they're going to carry 2 extra forwards or 1 extra forward and a couple extra defensemen. Mikheyev's health factors into all of that as well. But here we are, final day or night of the preseason. Still feels like there's a lot of moving parts here for the Talk.
What about the timing? Why is it coming to this? Why is it coming to the last game before we see grand change? Why wouldn't Tocchet have tried this in one of the previous 2 matches?
Well, and the one thing that he hasn't tried that we've talked about an awful lot is Quinn Hughes and Ian Cole. And Ian Cole the other day out at UBC almost sounded like he was lobbying for it. Talked about how comfortable he was on the right side and how much his time in this league that he's spent over on the right. And it's just something that they, not a practice, not a game, haven't gone down that road at all. So, look, Tocchet hasn't been thrilled with what he has seen. He's talked a lot about how he likes the fact that guys are grasping concepts. He's been happy with some of the practices, but the fact that they haven't scored a lot of goals, that guys haven't been going to the greasy parts of the ice. Like, this is a guy that's all about, battling for every inch out there. And he talked about it again this morning after the morning skate, that some guys have to get a little more uncomfortable, in his words, and that is there's a price to pay to go to the middle of the ice and to the front of the net. You're going to take a beating there, but that is where the bulk of the goals are scored. As for the defense combos, I don't really have an answer for you, but I guess I am a little surprised that it feels like it is still part of the audition period. But when the final buzzer sounds tonight, that's it. They'll have a couple of practices, but no more game action to make more evaluations about the way that they want to start here. And of course, they start against McDavid and Draisaitl. Not once, but twice. You'd think you'd like to have your ducks in a row when it comes to lining up and trying to defend 2 of the best players in the National Hockey League.
Just on Hughes Hronek, does it smack of desperation to you? And we've had a couple of listeners this week wonder, is Tocchet sort of messaging upstairs on this defense business committee and now finally going to Hughes Hronek that, guys, we ain't there yet. We need another one?
Well, I mean, we're seeing a lot of players on waivers, and we're going to see more here over the weekend as teams have to get down to their 23-man roster. So I think the Canucks, they're not doing their job. I mean, they're not doing their due diligence if they're not scouring the waiver wire every day. Now, they haven't added to the collection, but they may have their eyes on some guys that are going to have trouble getting through waivers in other markets. And so the fact that Cole McWard has remained here and has been an option for them, if there's an upgrade out there, they have to jump at it. So I don't know if it's messaging. I can understand if people are sort of looking at it that way. Desperation seems too strong a word to use in the preseason. If they get lit up by the Oilers here and all of a sudden they go to that in game 3, then yeah, maybe there's a little more desperation. But I do think that it is the time to experiment, and we'll see. I mean, I've been impressed with Filip Hronek, quite frankly. Again, the team hasn't scored a lot of goals, so there hasn't been much to see offensively in the preseason, and I've found myself drawn to watching him when he's been in uniform. The other night in Abbotsford, I thought he was strong on defense for the Vancouver Canucks.
He's good. They usually need another one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you make 2, please?
They come at a steep price, Blake, as you may recall.
Yes, they do.
But I thought the game in Seattle, where the Canucks got outplayed badly, and yet that pairing of Cole and Hronek that night tilted the ice. Like, their shifts were spent up ice and not defending. And so I think Filip Hronek, again, they did. They paid a pretty price to go get him. You would want to believe that 25-year-old right shot defenseman was right in their wheelhouse. And so it's still early days because he only played those 4 games last season and clearly wasn't fully healthy when he did. But kind of quietly, I've been impressed with his preseason to this point. So we'll see what he looks like getting the opportunity to play with Quinn Hughes.
Power plays, no surprise, I don't think, for anybody personnel-wise for PP1. Power play 2 had some surprises with Jack Studnicka getting a look there. Is there some hope that they will be able to make something of that second unit?
Yeah, and the joke at the rink this morning was it's been the autumn of Jack Studnicka.
Yeah, it has.
It's coincided with the fall of Nils Höglander, unfortunately. But there have been practices here where if Höglander was in, they would run a 4-forward set on the second power play unit. If Höglander wasn't, then Christian Wolanin, and they would go with 2 defensemen. Well, in this game, it looks like Höglander and Wolanin are both not going to play. And so good for Jack Studnicka. He's done what you want. He's been sort of the do-something guy here through camp in the preseason. But I think we had this discussion. Like, it's not enough just to be in the lineup. Like, there has to be some sort of bottom line, and I just don't know that there's a bottom line for a guy like Jack Studnicka. And the fact that he's on the second unit tells you that it gets pretty thin pretty quickly for the Vancouver Canucks offensively when it comes to the forwards that they've got out there. They've got Garland. They've got Beauvillier. Pia Suter is a center, and so he's out there primarily to take draws if the second unit ever takes faceoffs. And then you go to Jack Studnicka is your next best option. I know he was a high scorer in junior, but so many of these guys were. He doesn't profile that way as a pro and in the National Hockey League. But again, he's done enough to get the attention of the coaches and clearly to get a little sugar here with an opportunity on an NHL power play.
Is there any other red flags or green flags that you see in the lineup when you look at it right now?
I mean, the goal scoring has been an issue, and not just the depth guys. Like I said, Beauvillier, he's been remarkably quiet. Brock Besser had the 4 assist night when the Canucks were going against a McDavid and Draisaitl-less Oiler team, but really haven't noticed Brock an awful lot as the goal scorer that people still want him to be, and maybe that ship has sailed. JT Miller, it's preseason. He laughed today when somebody asked him, like, you're ready to go, and he said, oh yeah, like 3 games. 3 preseason games, that's plenty for me. I think it's been a pretty quiet preseason for JT Miller, but we know that it doesn't take much to get his motor running. So he'll be ready to go on Wednesday night in that capacity as a defensive. Like, is he going to get the matchup against McDavid? We don't know yet. They're facing the Flames tonight. So, I mean, I think there are still concerns. I think there's optimism that there are new pieces here and they're learning the systems and the structure. I think Pia Suter's been pretty decent. Teddy Bluger had the nice night in Edmonton. But again, you look around the division and it's just so hard to figure out a path for the Canucks to climb past 400-point teams, and then you've got their opponents tonight, the Calgary Flames. Nobody really knows what to make with new management there and a new coach and just a breath of fresh air with Daryl Sutter behind the bench. So I think it's going to be difficult for the Canucks. We won't get into season predictions just yet. We can do that next week. But I would just, given the fact that they have just a 1 win in 5 preseason games, they don't have to win this game tonight. The world doesn't change if they win or lose, but they're icing their best lineup. I hope that the procedure, the way that they play, looks a lot more like it did last Saturday when their top guys were going and Quinn Hughes was so dynamic. You know, if their top guys kind of stub their toe here tonight, again, it's not putting your best foot forward with opening night and just all the talk of the importance of the start and knowing the schedule and out on the road for 5 after the first one at home. I'd just like to see them feel a little bit better about themselves going into the regular season.
Well, that's what I said. That's what I said.
It looked like a real hockey team tonight.
And if this team has started October's well recently, you could poo-poo the preseason away easily. But given the way that they've started seasons, I don't think you can be that confident in just saying preseason doesn't matter. The process, at the very least, if not the results.
Well, I laughed because Connor Garland was one of the guys that was available after the morning skate, and somebody asked him just about what are you looking for in a game like this one, and he just said, like, you know, it's time to put summer hockey behind us. Like, and
good line.
Yeah, no, I thought, like, that's these veteran guys, they know that the preseason is a necessary evil and the intensity isn't where it needs to be, but it kind of felt like, all right, with 1 to go, close the door on summer hockey and start playing.
Well, guys, we warned teams about this, about flicking the switch for playoff hockey. Like, oh, if you're going to coast into the playoffs, well, you better be sure that you got a firm grip of the switch because it's hard to turn. Same thing with this. Like, make sure you know where that switch is. It's hard to flick it on.
Switching gears, Jeff, we all celebrate the retirement here of Stan Smyl, a guy we all have personal relationships with and a guy who's been a stalwart for this franchise for nearly a half century. We're asking on our Bodog poll question, do they have a heart and soul player like Stan on the team right now?
Player, not necessarily. The guy behind the bench, I think you can draw some through lines, and of course their careers overlapped. And Rick was asked about Stan Smyl and just said he was one of the first guys when he arrived that, you know, said my ear or my door is open. You've got my ear if you need anything. And I'm not surprised to hear that. That's the Stan Smyl that I know, and I think most people know. And you know, I tweeted out just a quick story with all the access issues last year. You know, when I got back into the building and was with the Hockey News late last season, as the game was ending and everybody was making a beeline for the elevators, like Stan came out of his way and came over, shook my hand, said, "Hey, congratulations, welcome back." You know, which indicated to me that he knew the story, that the struggles that we had gone through last year to get into that building on some nights, and also I just thought like that to me spoke volumes about the man himself. And it's 45 years in any business, any line of work with the same organization. You know, and Rick Tocchet kind of laughed about that when he said, like, I've, you know, played everywhere. I've coached a bunch of places, 45 years with the same organization. So Rick said that he hopes that Stan's not a stranger. He told him that anytime that he wants or needs anything, Rick is there for him. So, you know, a heart and soul player. Yeah, I think the search continues. You know, you want to believe that a Dakota Joshua, after being challenged by the coach, I think has upped his game a little bit, but he's certainly not in the Stan Smyl category or the discussion. But I think given the personnel that they've got, you know, JT Miller's probably the closest that they have, I would think, just in terms of a guy that, you know, wears his heart on his sleeve, plays the physical. And then that was the beauty of Stan as a player. I mean, you know, played so hard, wanted to run you out of the rink physically, but also had enough skill to, you know, dance around you and score goals, led this team in points and penalty minutes for a couple of seasons. Yeah, I mean, the Canucks as an organization would do well before Stan actually like walks out the door, just to, you know, point to him as a guy that they should take some inspiration from in the way that he played. I know the game has changed obviously over the years, but boy, they could use a Stan Smyl. You know, it's funny when I sort of do something became a catchphrase or a buzzword. You know, Stan was one of those guys that I always thought of because, like, he must sit and watch these preseason games now where nobody stands out. Nobody's trying to, just take the body every shift. And it must be difficult for him to watch, knowing the way that he played, the way that he kind of burst onto the scene. And they don't make him like that anymore. Not many that are cut from the Stan Smyl cloth.
The game has changed. Yep. Jeff, we thank you for your time here today. We have to cut the interview a little bit shorter here because Matt is trying to destroy the studio.
I repaired that on the fly. As a matter of fact, that thumping noise you heard, parts of my microphone.
Pay no attention.
Host/engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff.
True broadcasting pro.
See you on rink. Do you see how quickly I turned it off, Grady, and then went about fixing it?
What a pro. What a pro.
This Sekeres Price clip brought to you by Bodog. Make a play at Canada's choice for free casino games, sports odds, and poker strategies.